Thanks again to Jamie for letting us use that Mick McCarthy house music mix. We are the Premium FPL podcast at premium_FPL on Twitter. For those who are not already following us, please do. For injury updates, talking points, and videos of Mindy being slapped by a fish, but soon to be me joining the collection. I'm Callum, one half of the podcast, and as always, joined by Mindy. How's it going, Lane?
Yeah, not bad. Obviously, still pleased it's not me doing the forfeit again this month. We need to iron out the logistics for how we're going to record yours and all that stuff.
So yeah, looking forward to that. A nice little Christmas surprise for you.
Well, I think everyone that follows us is looking forward to it. The whole FPL Mansion premium player Twitter community. I think there's hundreds of people just waiting on you to be.
It's funny. I have mates who don't listen to the podcast, and I got a text off a few of them saying, "When you're doing your forfeit, lad." So word must be spreading about.
Yeah. So I think the main option is you having that concoction your brother suggested and wearing I'm thinking maybe an elf outfit is more embarrassing than a reindeer. Get you in some green red number.
Forfeit's a forfeit. I've got to agree to it as long as it doesn't kill me.
The thing I'm thinking about is how we film it, because obviously the previous ones we've been able to do outside, but with this being a smoothie, people will need to see what's gone in it, because that's part of it. All this horrible shit that's going to go in there needs to be part of the video, and then also you wearing the same stuff, otherwise you could have just filmed it and you could have replaced the fluids with something else. Knowing you'll do anything to get out of actually doing the forfeit properly. So we need to.
I'm sure we can work around it using the government guidelines.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe if we make one clip of you drinking it inside, and then I can meet you outside where we're allowed to meet, and then actually film you consuming it. But yeah, we'll think about that.
Okay.
So overall, happy enough. Week was all right in FPL. Tweeted out a bet offer that Boyle Sports had at the weekend, £10 free on the North London derby. Well, risk free, not free. So you would have got your money back if the bet lost. And I suggested using it on the Kane assist bet that I've been loving most weeks, and that landed within 15 minutes, which is always good. But then annoying that we didn't get on the other one we've mentioned a couple of times, the return the favour bet, Kane to assist Son, Son to assist Kane. So I think you mentioned it at 50-1, didn't you?
Yeah, I was looking for it in the morning. I couldn't find the odds on Sky Bet because I had a free bet, and then you've seen it at 75 at Willie Mill. So I think I've had it in the games where it's not come in.
I've only actually backed that once this season, and I saw it at 75-1 on William Hill, and I thought, it's Arsenal. How likely is it? They're going to try and keep it tight, but yeah. It just didn't work out that way. Thomas Partey walked off the pitch at one point to help the bet come in. So if I'd known that was going to happen, I think my mate Josh was saying you should have just backed it and told me about it. I would have put money on it. But it's just because something's 75-1, you can't. Most people who make money betting aren't betting on things that are 75-1 every week. So, but yeah,
and it's easy to say in hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah,
at the end of the day, Son isn't going to scream it from 30 yards every week.
The XG of that goal was something like 0.1 or something
that high.
Yeah, well, 0.01 maybe. Only down point of the week is you copying my team every week now. Just can't seem to.
Where's this? Where's this come from? I brought in last week Yotta, and who's a very popular player at the moment. He's gone up to 30%, and Reece James, who you don't even have. So I don't know where this myth.
Well, after I had Souček, you got him, and after I had Bamford, you got him as well. So it's a bit.
I'm bringing in popular players. I'm bringing in popular players who we discuss on the pod.
don't know. I think it's the biggest cock block since Hancock. I think. Tier 3 shithousery. That's what's going on. Like I'm gonna have to start throwing out decoys on the pod, just like mentioning like players I'm not even interested in, and then see if you bring them in, and then we'll know.
I thought we weren't making this podcast political. You spot that. We'll be getting brought down.
What about you? So you're backing yourself. You're just saying you're definitely not copying me. I'm not like you're not nervous with me in your rearview mirror.
No, I'm not nervous, but weirdly enough, I got the same Gameweek score, which is quite unusual.
Your voice was cracking up a little bit then when you said you weren't nervous. Are you sure?
I'm not nervous. I'm just bringing in popular players, and no doubt you're going to bring Salah in at some point, and I'll just be like, "Well, why are you copying me? I got Salah." I've
been saying for 3 weeks in our
You can't say I'm copying you when you're bringing in a player who's 30% owned. If you brought in, oh, who can I say who's smashing it? If you brought in Christian Benteke and I brought him in, then I think the questions will be asked. But for a 30% player owned, you can't say I'm copying you.
Well, I mean, it's just 3 weeks in a row the same player. Like
3 weeks, what?
Flags up. Well, Bamford, Souček. We might not be 3 weeks in a row, but there's definitely been 3 or 4 weeks where a week later you just brought in the player I've had. So I'm just watching you. I just want you to know.
All right, you're watching me from about 100 points behind, so keep watching, lad.
It's not 100 anymore. But yeah, should we talk about what we've got coming up this week? So yeah, we've discussed the forfeit. We'll have to we'll tweet out updates on when that's coming, so you know when to look out for it. Obviously, a lot of the premium options all delivered this week, so a bit of discussion on that and how many of them do you need to have. Some people are looking at ways to have 4 rather than 3, and then to facilitate all that, like who are the best budget options, like who do you downgrade to like fit in all these people like Kane, Salah, De Bruyne, Fernandes. And then in the weekly premium planning segment, we'll go over who we're looking to captain over the next few, because that'll help us decide which premiums our strategy is going to be focused around for the next weeks. And then also, as we're coming up to Christmas and fixture congestion's ramping up, we'll just talk briefly around how we're going to handle that. And then one update that came yesterday is that there's been a double game week announced in game week 19. So West Ham and West Brom are going to miss a game week 18, and then double game week in 19. So I think we knew there was going to be double game weeks coming for around then. So it's going to be a case of keeping an eye out. So yeah, there's not that much we know yet on that, but we'll cover off what we know. That's about it for the running order, I think, this week, isn't it?
Yeah. Just planning on bringing in all the West Brom players for 19, which will be a master stroke. Yeah,
of course. And what else do we need to mention? So we're recording Wednesday lunchtime this week, so we won't be aware of any injuries from the Champions League tonight. So bear that in mind if you, in case
Europa
Salah,
League as well.
In case Salah gets a hamstring or whatever tonight. And
luckily, I think most English teams are top anyway, so I don't think Liverpool and City will be playing a strong team tonight, unlike your boys last night. So we should be all right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep an eye on Jota's minutes. If he gets 90 tonight, I might be worrying about wherever he starts.
Yeah, he's probably one. Yeah.
But yeah, keep an eye on how many minutes the players get, and then I think that's it. It's not. Is there an early deadline this week, or is it Saturday?
No, I think it's Friday.
It is Friday. So yeah, 6:30. Get your team set by 6:30 Friday. Don't get caught out by that.
I think other than Monday, there's a game every day now up until Thursday, which we'll cover.
Yeah, it might be tricky for us to record next week. Actually, might have to miss a game week and just record after the midweek games next week or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll tweet out what we're doing. Podcast schedule for Christmas.
Yeah, it'll date very quick, won't there? There'll be so much happening.
Yeah. But yeah, should we get into how our game weeks went and all that stuff?
Yeah, let's have it.
You technically got a higher score, but you ended up on the same because you took a -4. But so I'll let you go first this week.
Yeah, so 81, but then obviously with a 4-point hit to bring in Mindy's Yotta, got 77. And that was with just 10 players. We talked about not transferring out the keeper, and I don't think too many of them mid-price got a clean sheet anyway. So I think we're justified in what we were saying last week about holding Martinez. And then Diaz, another clean sheet for City. The big talking point there is probably Cancelo coming in for Walker, which one to keep an eye on this evening. James got an assist. I've been reading actually that with Chelsea with Ziyech injured, he's going to be even more creative because Pulisic and Werner on the wings are more scorers than creators. So there's going to be bigger assist potential for him, I think. And then Chilwell too. Kyle Walker-Peters with that penalty assist, 5. Yotta 1, so didn't pay dividends. De Bruyne, Salah, both 14. I think they're the ones to own we talked about last week. Top 2 by far for me. Fernandez 6, even though we played 45 minutes. Bamford with 8. So, yeah, with that nice run coming up for Leeds, he looks like the best, I'd say, budget striker. And then Calvert-Lewin ticking along with 6. But there is questions whether people are going to start to take him out, which will be interesting because that'll kind of break up the template a bit if that happens.
Yeah, and what was that? I'm guessing that was a green arrow for you, rank increase.
Yeah, so up from 92 to 70 after Saturday with De Bruyne and Salah. I think I was up to about 20,000, but then the lack of Spurs kind of I'm always checking ranks at weekend. Probably shouldn't because so much can happen, especially now when there's games every day.
So yeah, just before we forget, actually, it's interesting on that although you can think that everyone's got rid of Kane and Son because they had hard fixtures, like they're still Son's are still. I think is he the most owned player in the game? So there will be those rank swings if you don't have them and they do well.
You still hit your rank. I think the EO last week for both of them was 100%. So if you kind of have one, you can kind of get away with if they both score. You kind of keep rank.
The EO.
So estimated ownership. So that factors in captaincy where they double up. Right. So both of them last week was 100% if you factor in captains because obviously that doubles. So yeah, they were saying if you had one, your rank would be the same. Whereas if you had none, obviously down. If you had both, then yeah. So you can kind of
FPL Rain Man over there bringing out bringing out the mathematical terms.
All the casual listeners have quickly switched off. But no, if you kind of have one and they're both scoring and assisting at the same rate, you can kind of get away with it, which will be interesting.
Well, yeah, it'll be interesting as we talk about what we do with Spurs assets a bit later. But yeah, my week. So yeah, I'm not going to go through every player because it's pretty much the same as yours, apart from James, I think.
Sure.
Oh, you don't have Suchek anymore, do you?
No, that was a great transfer last week. Brought him out for Yotta.
But so yeah, I've been quite lucky that the weeks so
far.
Your
subs keep scoring.
Yeah, the weeks where I've needed Suchek, he delivers, and then when he's on my bench, he's not, which is good. So yeah, the decision for me going into last week was what to do with the Villa players, and I decided just to leave them. So I didn't have a playing goalkeeper, but I was fine with that for 1 week because, as we discussed last week, the ceiling for keepers is low, and I wanted to keep 2 free to bring in Salah this week. Because yeah, in the premium planning segments previously, we said Salah for Fulham this week, like the standout captain. So wanted to make sure I was flexible enough for bringing him in. So we'll talk about that later. My rank with that score of 77, now up to just outside the top million. So slowly chipping away the past few weeks, rising up from 3.5 million a few weeks ago. So yeah, I just hope now this Christmas period where it tends to be a time where you can make big progress. I just hope can crack on now, not have any slip ups. And yeah, I think getting the right captains in for this part where all the premiums are firing will be key for this part of the season. But yeah, we'll talk about what we do with all those premiums soon. Should we talk about this double game week thing next?
Yeah, so like you touched on in your intro, I think it's West Ham and West Brom at the moment, but I think there's more games that are going to be added to that. I think that was earmarked at the start of the season as where games can be shuffled if need be, because Europe's obviously over. So it'd be interesting to keep an eye on that, and especially if more get added, whether people with the wild card are at an advantage. And obviously if the chips come into play, I think in previous years, normal years, the top players have been keen to keep onto the chips as late as possible, really, because they kind of have a bigger impact in the season. But this might kind of change things, really. If you've got players who, say, if you have none with a double game week and there's 4 or 5 fixtures, they'll definitely come into thinking to play a free hit if you don't have that wild card, rather than ripping your team up.
Yeah, so I think it might be a bit different, as you say, this season, because usually in game week 1 you don't have City and United missing a week, which guarantees them a double game week quite early, because usually they come a bit later in the season, don't they? So yeah, I think it'll be different how people approach it this year. I think it's probably a bit too early to start earmarking who you're going to want for it now, and it's a case of seeing what teams get added and when. I guess what I'd say is don't start using your free hit and triple captain and that stuff now, like before we know what's going on. Because yeah, like we had a question on the podcast a few weeks, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, about using the free hit for having 2 or 3 players missing, and we recommended to just keep it because it'll have a bigger impact with these blanks and doubles. So that advice stays the same. Don't start. Don't start using it now, I guess, if you've held on to your chips this long. And if you've still got a wild card, definitely keep it until we know when best to use it for these doubles. So even me and you both used our wild cards, but we'll try and give people pointers in case there's some people who've managed to hold on to it. It's impressive if you still managed to keep hold of it this long. But yeah, there are people out there who have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the people who are holding the wild card will probably look towards the latest possible date, which I think is in between 16 and 17. I think there's 2 days in between that. So I wouldn't wish anyone that, really, especially with New Year's Eve and stuff. Yeah, it'd be quite an interesting time, because you kind of want to put a little thought into your wild card, and 2 days doesn't really give you much time to do that.
Yeah, that would be a bit of a nightmare, having to make a whole new team in 2 days when you want to be drinking and stuff over New Year.
Yeah, so maybe it isn't the best on paper.
So yeah, one player just to mention quickly. So I think Souček looks an ideal hold with West Ham having that double, because he's cheap enough and he's playing that, like, for the blank that West Ham have in game week 18. With his price, you're happy to bench him, and then he's a great option to then have for a team that have a double, because he's got that goal threat, as he's shown at the weekend. So, and then I don't know, who else we'd maybe want to look at. Antonio, if he's fit by then. Bowen's
the defense.
The defense as well. I
West Ham's strong.
Yeah, we'll talk about downgrades and stuff, affording premiums a bit more later. But yeah, West Ham defence could be where people look for taking premium defenders down to cheap defenders to afford more in midfield. But yeah, I guess there's not too much we can say yet about the double, because we don't. It was mentioned yesterday with the fixture announcement, so we'll have to wait for more updates and see what other teams get added before we can make a proper plan. But yeah, just to mark your cards. Mark your cards. Look out for that. The next section, is, as we've just been mentioning, how do we afford all these expensive midfielders that are banging at the moment, and who are the best cheap options to bring in to afford all these players? So it is tricky, isn't it? because it's not just who are the cheapest ones to bring in, it's who of the mid-price players that you've got that are doing well, which of those do you decide to take out? Because that could easily bite you. So there's going to be a lot of people making difficult decisions this week, and I'm one of them. I guess it's a bit easier for you because you've already got Salah in place.
Yeah, and I do. And going back to your addition of Souček into the team, I think if you are looking to downgrade, bring someone in, I think if you can have someone who's 90 minutes like Souček or someone similar, I think that'll help definitely coming into the Christmas period to save one of your star players is drop, that you have at least 2 points on the bench. I think that's important. Obviously, a lot of people bring in Brewster or someone like that to fund this, but whether this is the right way, because there might come a point where you need to play him, and if Brewster's coming on for 10 minutes on the bench, maybe that isn't the best strategy. I think for me, I think the midfield is so important. Obviously, we talked about it. That's where the money should be going, and whether you can sacrifice the forward line, because there's quite a few nice options with Bamford, Watkins, even Callum Wilson around that value. So I think that's where you can get your money back, is the forwards this year for sure. Other than Kane, really, and Calvert-Lewin, who's kind of approaching, who's getting up to like 8 mil now. But other than them two, you can kind of get away with having a cheaper striker. So I think that's probably the best way of doing it.
Yeah, I think you can save a bit of money in defence, I think, as well. Something I've been looking at, just in case I need an extra bit of money, is Chilwell to James, because I'm not sure I want 2 Chelsea defenders. And now that James looks nailed on, I think we just weren't sure at the beginning, which is why everyone went for Chilwell. But if he is nailed on and he is more of an attacking threat, as you mentioned, I think that saves 0.6. So that could be a way to eke out a bit of money for all the people that are on Chilwell. And then in terms of like other like bargain basement type players, if you need to save a few million, there are a few playing for defenders that play week in, week out at 4.3, 4.4. It's like Charlie Taylor at Burnley and Lewis at Newcastle. Obviously, they're not ideal options, and you'll have to think about which one has the best fixtures to bring in. But if that facilitates you having Salah, De Bruyne, and Fernandes, that's a calculated risk you have to make, I think, because they do look to be consistent. Like you can kind of plan then around having the best captain for each week, knowing that you've got those funds available. So while it doesn't sound appealing having 4.3, 4.4 million players, if it means your captain is the best person in that week, then you're giving yourself a good chance of having a good score. Like, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Would you be making that small compromise of having a less than ideal player in one of the in one of those positions to be able to facilitate having all these expensive players?
I think for me, if you asked 4 to 6 weeks ago, defense like downgrading, I'd say yes, definitely, absolutely. But the past few weeks, I think the defenses have started to look a lot stronger. Chelsea and City come to mind. Even Liverpool now, the weekend against Wolves, they looked pretty damn impressive with Matip and Fabinho in there. I don't think Wolves even had a shot of note. So, yeah, it's an interesting way up what to do, really. My only thing to counter your argument is obviously Reece James is 5.2, and for a 4.5 defender to him is quite a big jump. Whereas if you're doing the same in midfield, probably not getting the same points difference.
Yeah, true.
Between like if you get what I mean, between a 4.5 mid to a 5.2 mid, you're probably not getting that much. Whereas the points difference in defense could be quite huge, and relatively, the money in defense isn't that much difference, whereas the midfield, there's quite a big disparity in price. So you're not actually making that much money back in your defense, just to counter that. But over Christmas, whether them clean sheets continue because teams will be tired and stuff like that. So maybe not. Maybe a 4.3, 90 minutes is the way to go.
I think, yeah, one other thing to mention there is that over Christmas, you'd think it's like centre-back options that tend to play most minutes because
definitely,
managers don't sub off centre-backs that much. Whereas fullbacks who are marauding up and down the touchline maybe are prone to a bit more rotation. And yeah, just in terms of what you were saying about value and points and all that, I think I saw a tweet on the official Premier League account that Zuma's the best value player in terms of points per million so far, which sort of backs up what you were saying.
Right, I bet a few defenders are quite high up. That is the point that I was getting across. It's good to.
I just think if having that, like, I think it can, if you can get caught up a little bit though on value, because I remember when I first started playing FPL, that was kind of what I used to look at, like having a balanced team and having like a lot of money in defense, decent bit of money in midfield, and in that first season, I ended up not being able to afford Robin van Persie, who was, I think, was the most expensive player in the game at that point, and people were just captaining him most weeks, and I thought that, oh well, it's better that I have a balanced team. But if it meant that I didn't have the best captain most weeks, I was just, the rest of my team didn't make up for not having a good captain, if that makes sense. So something I learned quite early on playing FPL was that it's better. I think it's better to have the best captains for the next 5 to 6 weeks rather than, focusing so much on value, especially when there's so many of the big midfielders firing. So yeah, it's one to weigh up personally. Like how do you play?
It's not really personal preference. There isn't right and wrong answer. I was just countering your argument really, just to give the viewers to make up their own opinion. Really, I think that's what makes FPL so good. Everyone has their own different. There's the template players, but then other than that, there's so many different ways to play it.
So in terms of the well-owned like mid-price options that people might be looking to downgrade just because they need money to bring in Salah this week for people who haven't got him. I think people are discussing Calvert-Lewin, people are discussing Kane, people who've got Kane, and they're the two I'm kind of looking at as well. So it's a really, really hard call because like Calvert-Lewin's gone up so much in value. So I bought him at 7.1 and now he's 8. So if I wanted him again after his harder fixtures, I'm paying a completely different price to what I paid, which doesn't bother me too much, but you have to factor it into your decision. And Kane, the thing that puts me off selling him is that in Gameweek 16, he's got Fulham at home. And we've talked about, targeting Fulham with the captaincy in previous episodes. So is taking him out and knowing I'm going to want him back in 4 weeks or something, is that the best use of my precious transfers? So it's going to go down to the wire for me. I think what I'd recommend is thinking like, how quickly would you potentially want back the player that you're going to take out? I think that's going to be the way I decide. And then also think about who you're going to captain over the next 5. Like who is the best captain in those next 5, and if the player that you're wanting to get rid of to fund Salah is one of them, then you might have to think of a different plan. Don't know if you got anything to add on that.
Yeah, no. But the thing is with Kane, I know he's scoring a lot of points in his own outright, but Son's matching him pretty much week in, week out, and he's 3 million less or 2 points something. So if you were to get rid of Kane and bring Son in, that does give you a bit more value to spend elsewhere in your team. You can have a bit of cover then, because say you want Liverpool covered with Salah, City covered with De Bruyne, United covered with Bruno, Tottenham covered with Son. You kind of got a really strong premium options there, and then you kind of fill your team out around that. That's my only thinking, just because I'm thinking of bringing Son back after the Liverpool game. Jota out for Son, and then that would mean downgrading Calvert-Lewin. I'm kind of giving Calvert-Lewin the Chelsea game really to see how good he is against a big team when Everton aren't playing too well. If he blanks there, then it might be questions to remove him. But I'm in the same as you. I brought him in at 7 mil, so I'd lose quite a bit.
Yeah, so it might sound like madness why we're discussing Calvert-Lewin. Just to touch on his fixtures, Chelsea at home, Leicester away, Arsenal at home, Sheffield away, City at home. So it's quite a tough Christmas, New Year period for him. And they're missing.
He's lost Digne as well, which
Yeah.
was his main creation for goals. And Hammers has really gone off the boil recently. So yeah, his two main creators really. One's injured and one's not playing too great.
One other thing to mention with Calvert-Lewin is that he, looking at his scores, he tends to need a goal, more than a goal, to get in the bonus. So if he just scores one goal, he seems to end up on 6 points most weeks because
he's sat in the 6-yard box.
Yeah, he's not playing key passes. He's not putting crosses in. He's not doing the things that build the baseline bonus metric. So if you think that, if you were to look at it kind of like how many goals is he going to get over the next few, you'd think against Chelsea and City he isn't going to score more than one. But then it's those games in between where, he might be able to still. So it's just thinking what is his point ceiling in these games, and are you willing to sacrifice that to get Salah in, for example, which is something I'm going to think about. So yeah, that's one. And then Kane, yeah, I think your idea of having Son instead is good. And I think if you're not going to captain Kane over the next 4, you've got, if you've got Salah and De Bruyne in place, and Fernandes, for example, they are probably better captain options in the next 4. We'll talk about that more later, but maybe you can get rid of Kane and then get Son in as the Spurs cover a bit later. So I might have a plan for that, which I'll talk about in the premium planning segment. But yeah, is there anyone else who you reckon people could downgrade that might not buy them over the next few to afford Salah?
Not really, other than we've discussed. There's so many options in that defence if it's a little amount of money you need. Bamford, for me, with them fixtures coming up, if you don't have him, then downgrading a forward to get someone in would be, because you've got West Ham, Newcastle, United away, which on the face of it now doesn't even look that difficult. I know it's not ideal, but then you've got Burnley and West Brom. So I think for me, he's probably the main guy I'd bring in if I needed to get money elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a fair shout. I think one stat I saw, actually, I'm just going to quickly bring up while we're on Bamford.
I think he's still leading every stat that kind of means goals are coming.
Well, right? I don't have it to hand. A stat that I saw, though, which kind of might be interesting to people who may be deciding on downgrading Calvert-Lewin to Bamford, is that his goal conversion is something like 30% from what I remember, or maybe 13 actually. He takes so many shots, whereas
Calvert-Lewin is quite good.
No, it's 13, I think. And whereas Calvert-Lewin's shot conversion is ridiculous. He just doesn't need, his finishing's just so good. We talked about him having that one-touch finishing that Carlo Ancelotti had with Inzaghi, in Game Week 1 or Game Week 2 or something. So while Bamford racks up shots and all that stuff and is top of those stats, his shot conversion is bad. But from watching these games, the shots that he misses, there's ones where he's hitting the post or the keeper's making good saves. He's not skying them. So I'd like to think that Bamford will improve on that conversion in these easier games. Whereas
I could be wrong. He's over the Christmas period. He looks like a 90-minute man for me because attackers don't expend too much energy. Well, you could say that about Calvert-Lewin. Actually, I can't see Calvert-Lewin being dropped. Yeah, so that's probably not the good argument to use that differentiate them two. But yeah, if you're looking for pros for either of them two, 90 minutes.
Yeah, they are both 90-minute men, which makes it harder. Should we transition into the premium segment?
Yeah.
So I was just talking about maybe having a plan with Kane and Son. So something I'm looking at is Grealish. The run that we had Grealish for of Aston Villa's nice fixtures, it starts to come to an end like game week 14. So they've got Wolves away game week 12, Burnley at home game week 13, and then West Brom away game week 14. And then it's Crystal Palace at home, which you'd think would be a tighter game. So I might do Grealish to Son come game week 15. because then game week 16, Spurs have Fulham. So yeah, if I get rid of Kane this week to fund Salah, I can then I won't have a Spurs player for a few weeks, but the most ideal fixture that they've got coming up is that Fulham game, and it looks like Grealish's fixtures dovetail, like the downturn in Aston Villa's fixtures dovetails quite nicely with the arrival of that Fulham game. So that might be my plan, I think. But yeah, I need to think more about it, and that would mean I don't have to lose Calvert-Lewin, and then given that I got him at 7, and then have to pay 8 in a few game weeks' time to get him back. So yeah, I don't know what you think on that. Like, have you had any plans for Grealish? Are you planning to keep him for the season?
No, that's interesting with Grealish. I was planning on getting rid of the Aston Villa assets around that time, but I've not given it much thought yet. So that is interesting. As I said earlier, my plan was next week, if Jota doesn't play again this weekend, would be Jota and Calvert-Lewin to Son, and then a cheap striker, so a Brewster or someone like that. I'd still have a playing sub, so it'd be Kyle Walker-Peters. So hopefully I wouldn't have 2 people rested over the same game week, which is obviously a bit of a risk. But yeah, it's interesting that the fixtures kind of intertwine, that it could be a Grealish to Son. And yeah, I'd hopefully try and get them both, Son and Kane, back for that nice run, whether it allows. It's in the new year, isn't it? It's just always a bit of a concern. I know they got Crystal Palace away at the weekend, which looks a tough fixture, but you could easily see him scoring and assisting again, which will be a killer to the rank.
Yeah, it's just so Spurs have Liverpool away after that, and then they've got, well, it's tricky. It's game week 15, Wolves away. Like, normally I wouldn't like that fixture, but now that Nuno's playing a back 4, it does look like they can concede quite a few goals. They aren't as tight as they used to be. So it's hard to say. I don't know whether he's going to stick with that, but it's just it's tricky. Like, there are some managers who are managing to keep Kane or Son and have Fernandes, De Bruyne, and Salah. But yeah, they're people who are playing Souček every week or Brewster every week and stuff like that, which doesn't really suit my team that well, I don't think. So yeah, I'm gonna have to make a call on Kane or Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah, I mean, if I did that next week, I would have Fernandes, Salah, De Bruyne, Son, and Grealish. But it would be Bamford and Watkins up top, which, if you look at the stats and stuff, I think that's still a good forward line. But like you say, with Aston Villa's changing fixtures, it might not be the greatest option up front.
Who's your third striker?
At the moment, it's Calvert-Lewin, but if I did take him out, it would be a Brewster, or I think I'd have 4.9, so it wouldn't. I know Welbeck's emerged as a 5.5, but whether he, obviously with his injury problems and stuff, and whether Brighton are that attacking going forward, I'm not sure whether he'd be. I think beyond Spurs' tough run, I think you do want Kane, but it's whether you can kind of go without him for the next few weeks. I've kind of took the gamble 2 weeks ago, and 2 weeks it looked like a masterstroke, and then last week it kind of went the other way. So
yeah, I think the difficult thing with Spurs is that you can look and say, oh, they've got some tricky fixtures, but when they score, it's like, it's going to be Kane or Son involved. Like, the goal involvement those two players have. It's not like City where, Mahrez scores 1 week and then De Bruyne is getting in the points the next week, and you're sort of wondering where all the points. It's like where the points are coming from, so it makes it hard to take them out for bad fixtures because of that high goal involvement. But I guess you could say the same for Calvert-Lewin. Like, when Everton score,
there's probably a few players, or Wilson for Newcastle. Not many more players are going to score if Newcastle get a goal.
So yeah, I feel like for me this week, there's no easy way to Salah back. Like, nothing stands out as like he's the definite one to make way. So it's going to be a case of thinking about it over the next couple of days, seeing what managers say in the press conferences, and going from there. Should we talk a little bit about captain? So yeah, it's Salah this week for you, and it will be for me once I've got him. And I think that would be the advice. Like, we've seen, like, over the past few, like with Kevin De Bruyne at the weekend. Like he was the standout captain, and he could have had so many more points in that game. So I think if you can get Salah this week without like a -8 or something, that would be the advice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
What about the week after?
The week after.
Is it back to De Bruyne?
Yeah, City, West Brom, yeah. And then 14, it's United off.
Leeds at home.
Yeah. So Bruno kind of comes into the equation. I think what will help Bruno going forward in the new year is the Europa League. I don't think if United get an easy fixture, I think he'll be focused on the Premier League, which will be better for FPL.
So one thing to mention on people who might be looking at getting rid of Bruno or KDB for Salah, it's just to mention that game week 13, obviously Liverpool play Tottenham, so that means you aren't going to want to captain Kane or Son, and you probably won't want to captain Salah in that week because you think that'll be a tight game when Mourinho parks the bus, sort of thing. So try not to be. That's why it's important to think like 2 or 3 weeks ahead. So don't just think that United and City are playing each other this week, so I'll take out one of them, and then you're just leaving yourself a problem a week later potentially. Because I guess that would be the easiest way to get Salah back for a lot of people, wouldn't it? Just get rid of De Bruyne or Fernandes, but you have to think in the next few that you're going to want them for their captaincy games. So that's why we've been deliberating over. Well, that's why I've been deliberating over Kane or Calvert-Lewin out instead, because I'm thinking of the captains.
That's probably a massive pro as well, to having a United, Liverpool, City and Tottenham player in some extent, one of their premiums. If you can get 4 of them in, it kind of gives you a captaincy option till the end of the season, really.
Yeah, true. I think
it'll probably give you the strongest captaincy option. Probably. I'd be very surprised if one of them 4 isn't the top owned every week.
That's sounds about right, doesn't it? I think having 4 of the most expensive ones from that, it's difficult not to make loads of compromises, but I think if you've got 3 and you're happy to maybe miss out on the best captain the odd week, then you can still make do with 3, I think. But yeah, if you can have 4 and you're happy with the rest of the team, then you go for it. Should we touch on the questions before we wrap it up? Just
to touch on my team, actually, just to be selfish this week. I've kind of got a sub dilemma. So I got Watkins and Diaz, which on my bench at the moment playing Wolves in United. It's because Kyle Walker-Peters got such a good game, Sheffield United at home, and then whether Watkins in for Calvert-Lewin. So we advocate having a strong bench, especially over Christmas, but it's not necessarily the best thing when you come to pick a team because you're worried about the points that you might leave on the bench.
Yeah, I think when we talked about bench points as one of the segments a few weeks ago, we said try not to have like players over 6 million on the bench. But that's what you've ended up with. Yeah,
just because my squad strength's quite strong at the moment. So
all right, Billy, big bollocks.
but then Watkins got 13 points and he was rotting on my bench 2 weeks ago. So I'm just saying it's not necessarily. Maybe if you have one who's 4.5 and playing every week, maybe that's enough.
Yeah. Well, I reckon you should just bench Watkins again. What could go wrong?
Well, that's what it is at the moment, but that's because I'm afraid of Calvert-Lewin. But whether that Watkins comes in for Calvert-Lewin, interesting.
Yeah. So, not that I want to help your team or whatever, but would you not look at it and maybe think, what's Kyle Walker-Peters' ceiling, even though it's an easy fixture, like compared to the ceiling of 2 strikers who've shown they can haul, like what would annoy you more, a clean sheet on the bench from Walker-Peters or a 12-13 pointer from one of those strikers?
True.
But no, I agree. Keep Watkins on the bench. Just stick with what.
But I've only got three defenders anyway, so it would either have to be Walker-Peters or Diaz.
Yeah, but well, I think if I was you, I'd probably go Walker-Peters. But
back yourself.
Stick with what you got. Keep.
Not fancy you boys at home.
keep those keep those expensive performing strikers on your bench. I agree. Let's get to the questions.
So
we've got 3 minutes to wrap through these questions.
Right. So the first one was obviously from my brother, and it was, do we drop Calvert-Lewin? And we've talked quite a lot about him. Like I said, I'm probably going to give him one more week. I mean, he's still not doing badly. 13, his last 5 at 8-5, 13, 2, 6. So he's kind of doing as what you'd want from a 8 million forward. But yeah, it's just being coy and jumping off at the right time, jumping on at the right time. And if Everton do start to look, I mean, he got a late goal last weekend, didn't he, against Burnley. And if they do start to drop off a bit, then yeah.
I think the other thing to say that I didn't mention when we were talking about Calvert-Lewin before is that you're definitely not going to captain him over the next 6. Like, there's 2 or 3 better options in all the games. So that does mean he is droppable. And yeah, if you've paid like 7.5, 7.6 and you got him a bit later and you're not losing that much, makes it a bit easier to drop him as well, because what you paid won't be that much different to what you have to pay to get him back after the bad run. So that might make it easier for some people. So yeah, especially if you're a fixtures person and you just believe in following the fixtures, then yeah, Calvert-Lewin does look an option for getting rid of, I think.
Nice. And then the next question was from your favourite questioner,
Orion.
Your favourite quiz host. Yeah. Do you want me to, I'll read it out. So City lost to United 3 times last season. So Ollie's obviously got Pep's number, but United are a wounded animal. What are our thoughts on having City United? And do we play a free hit if our team is flooded with players from both?
Well, no, the free hit thing's out of the question, I think, because of what we just talked about with the double game weeks come in and blanks come in. Like, you'll need the free hit so much more. So hold on to that. I think the games that City United have played out, they've not been like, I don't think there've been many like 0-0, 1-0s. There tended to be goals, hasn't there? So
yeah,
I'm not like De Bruyne and Fernandes could still get points, and yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be that worried about it. If you've got 3 or 4 players from the team, like, you might not have a good week as other people who've only got 1 or 2, but you'll have an even worse week in the blank week if you've used your free hit just to avoid one bad fixture for these players. I think that's what I'd say on that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I can see both Fernandes and De Bruyne doing well in that fixture. So yeah, I'd probably hold. I wouldn't be rushing to. I probably won't captain either of them, but yeah, I'd be looking to whether the defenders something you keep, maybe not, but yeah, I wouldn't be worried about Fernandes and De Bruyne.
Cool. That's it for this week.
That's us. Yeah.
We'll try and get the forfeit done over the next week or so and get that out. But yeah, keep an eye on the Twitter, follow us, and you'll see it there first.
Can you post what changes you're doing just before the deadline? Just give me enough time.
Yeah, I actually forgot the last week. Usually it's you that doesn't bother tweeting out your changes, but it was me this week. Poor form. But yeah, we'll be back at some point next week, maybe after the midweek games. Yeah. Good luck over the next 2 game weeks, and see you next week.
See you on the other side.